3.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Idiomatic Top 3.
With Nicholas, I am the gaming correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic and movie critic. In the last episode we did overrated picks for sequels, and we promised a part 2, where we would discuss the mechanics of the sequel, and here it is, right now. With a question that we absolutely need to ask when we talk about sequels is, well, what's the point of a sequel? Like, do you prefer a sequel than a new franchise being created? Like, because there are a lot of sequels in Hollywood. I think this summer, half the movies coming out as blockbusters are sequels in some shape or form, or reboots or remakes or whatever.
Yeah.
Why are there so many sequels? Is a sequel really better than a new franchise?
I don't know. I like a sequel because you already have established characters. That's one thing. So you don't have to take all the time to reestablish them again and again. Okay, this is this character. This is what he likes. This is what he hates. Again, that's only useful when you actually respect what the character is in the sequel following. Okay, a certain example where the character changes completely. I don't like that for no reason whatsoever as well.
You're referring to April O'Neil in Ninja Turtles 2, aren't you?
For example, one sequel that people like, it wasn't the worst of the series, but Highlander Endgames.
Mm-hmm.
In the previous movies, Connor McLeod is like he loves life and he wants to live. He has fun. And in the fourth one, he's all brooding for no reason whatsoever, and he hates everything, and he wants to die. And that's not Connor McLeod. I mean, and that I kind of hated about the movie. It's not the same character.
Are you sure that it wasn't Christophe Lambert just being really depressed that the other guy's getting more attention than him at this point?
No, Christophe Lambert wanted to end it. He wanted to be, it over because he knew he was getting too old to play some immortal that didn't age. So he knew this is over. I'm passing the torch, and but his character is completely different from what has been established in the first 3 movies. Even in the horror fest that is Highlander 2. He keeps the same character that he has in the first movie. He was an
alien in the first movie and in the second movie.
Besides the alien, he's kind of he's a little on so he's amused at everything that's happened to him, but he still enjoys living, and so that's what he was. And in the fourth, it's completely different. So if you're going to reuse characters, that's the point. That they're already established, and the audience likes them. You want to keep them the same way, and that's why I think sequels are fun, because you don't have to, recreate the characters all over again.
It allows you to take some shortcuts, because the thing is, there are only so many times you can reinvent the wheel,
Yeah.
Until we get, because every once in a while somebody comes up with a new way of doing things. In cinema, as in everything else, it evolves, and so there are new ideas being produced, but a lot of times you're just recycling the same archetypes. Like, you can't tell me there's that much of a difference between John McClane and Riggs from Lethal Weapon. They have different backgrounds, but are they really that different, Bad example. They actually are different. Because one's not a crazy racist.
Exactly. But, you're right. They're not that different, They're just the archetypal, action star tough guy that,
So if you're going to have a tough guy, and you already have created a tough guy that people like, why not just reuse the same characters so that we don't have to go through the same cliches like, he's a tough guy, but he has a heart of gold. Yes, we know.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through that again. It's a shortcut. Why create a guy that's like James Bond if you can have James Bond,
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's fun to, you see how will the director establish, or the writer establish that he's a bad guy with a heart of gold. You need different scenes to establish, that. And you want to see how the guy does it.
Yeah. Well, it's true that even in the sequel, you sort of have to remind people of who he is.
Yeah, but not as much, I guess. So, yeah. But, yeah, I think you're right that, if you have the guy already, just use the guy.
Yeah. The flip side of that, however, is that you do run the risk of being redundant at some point. Like, when you reach... again, because I'm a horror fan, the first example that comes to mind is something like Halloween with Michael Myers there.
Yeah.
After the 7th or 8th movie, which is actually where they're at this point, I know who Michael is. I know what he does to kill people. I've seen it 6 times at this point. I'm bored.
Yeah.
Because, that's an example of where, at this point, I would rather see a different monster. I know that the different monster is still going to kill, teenagers and babysitters or people in the woods in the case of Jason. But if it's a different killer, you can bring something new to it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and that of course applies to other genres as well. Certainly in action movies, if you actually have a different character in mind with a different background, you can place him in the same situation. That's a good reason to start a new franchise. Definitely, you know.
Yeah.
For example, I think Speed was a great example of a movie where theoretically you could have had Sylvester Stallone play the same role as, you know.
You could have had Lethal Weapon. You could have Riggs easily drive that bus, and Murtha tried to, help him from the outside.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. But bringing in this new character played by Keanu Reeves, who's a little bit more muted in his extravagance, he's a little bit less charismatic. To say he's less charismatic is not necessarily fair, because the actor is very charismatic.
Yeah.
Not a good actor, but very charismatic.
Yeah.
But have him play a character that's a little bit more of a team player, you know, and all of that did bring Speed into a completely different zone as a movie. So there's an upside and downside to everything.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears and let's go for underrated picks.
All right. Well, a lot of people don't like that movie. They claim it did not live up to the first one, but Matrix Reloaded is my first pick.
I agree with you.
I think it's a good movie. I mean, the story was not as involved as the first one, but at that point, I went to that movie to see some cool action, and I got what I wanted. You know, that's it.
No, yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the flack that Reloaded got was from the fact that Revolution sucked monkey balls.
Yeah.
And I think because Revolution sucked monkey balls and, you know, Reloaded led directly into Revolutions, people tend to lump in the two and go like, not even Reloaded was good. I hated Reloaded too. And it's like, you're lying because you went to see Revolution, so you must have liked Reloaded on some level. You're lying. I actually like it a lot too. The scene in the highway.
Oh, the highway scene was spectacular. Not since, I think, Terminator 2 had I seen a scene I was like, whoa, what the hell is happening here? This is awesome. I mean, it really pushed the action. The first movie had really cool action, and this one pushed the action even further. And then they really dropped the ball in the third one, but, you know, I'm not talking about the third one, I'm talking about the second one, which was, it's a good movie, and it should not receive the flack from the fanboy as it is.
No, I agree. Like you mentioned, it's I think Matrix, when it came out, elevated the level of action the same way as you've mentioned Terminator 2 did in 1991.
Yeah.
And it must have been such a challenge and a scary thing for the Wachowski brothers to go like, how can we top what we did with Matrix 1, since we essentially, you know, revived the action film at that point, you know? And I think they totally did. I think it's just breathtaking, that scene. I love listening to it. The music in it, co-composed by Rob Dugan, it's just astounding.
Yeah.
And I actually like this story. Like, I actually think it is a little bit more complex in its philosophy than the first Matrix. Because the first Matrix is relatively shallow when you think about it. You feel liberated watching it because you're like, you know, it's all about freedom and choice and all of that, and you feel really good coming out of it. But it's not. It's sort of pandering just a little bit. It's not exactly complex.
Yes, it is.
And the second one was sort of like brought up some interesting questions. They brought up the simple idea of like, well, you know, if it's a lot of people have misinterpreted it as it being fate versus free will, but it's actually more. It's a little bit more complex than that, because it's all about, well, if you were born the way you are, and that's determined by genetics, then all of your decisions and choices are predetermined by who you are as a person. So are you really free, or are you just a prisoner of who you are genetically, or just as a person? Like, is that really free will? Like, can you actually break free of your own nature, if you will? And that's an interesting question, because if you go like, well, I'm going to do the opposite of what I feel like doing, well, you're still following your contrarian nature. You know? So you're always going to be a prisoner of yourself. And like, can you really feel freedom in that case? And it addresses that, and it doesn't come out with any resolution or answer. Or rather, it does come out with an answer, but it's kind of a cop-out answer, to be perfectly honest. But I like the fact that it brought up the question.
And the third one does not bring anything to the table at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. So a smarter movie than people give it credit, and certainly, as you pointed out, a more kick-ass, awesome action movie than people give it credit.
Yeah, yes. Oh, if people complain about the action, they don't know what they're talking about, honestly.
Yeah.
So what is your first pick?
Godfather 3 is awesome. No, I'm exaggerating. Godfather 3 is indeed a little bit less good than Godfather 1 and 2, but it is an incredibly smart movie and certainly a very worthy conclusion to the Godfather trilogy. And everybody who goes like, it ruined the Godfather trilogy, is like, really? Aren't you being a little bit rough on a very perfectly good movie?
It insists upon itself. That is my main problem.
Does it?
What do people say that is so bad about the movie?
Well, a lot of people complained about how it got hijacked for a romance between young people, and how it doesn't really deal with any of the themes of the Godfathers, and it's a separate movie that's just not as good, and it's just there to be commercially there, and doesn't really offer anything to the overall story of the Godfather. That's the main complaint usually for it, and I think some of it is crap, because the whole idea of the first Godfather movie is how an honest man brought up by criminals ends up a criminal himself. By love, by loyalty, by all of the virtues that make him a good man and a good soldier in that movie, he ends up a criminal in the end. Spoiler alert. And the second movie is all about comparing how far his sins have gone and how bad a man he becomes in this criminal life, and compare it to the person who trapped him in this criminal life, his father, because it's two parallel stories, and how that man, who also started off as a reasonable good man, also went into a life of crime and created the sort of sins that are being carried by his son, Michael Corleone. And the third movie, and which nobody ever acknowledges for some reason, because I suspect nobody is trying to understand the movie, they're just so satisfied with just dumping on it, is all about, well, how this guy tries to dig himself out of that hole. And how when you've done that many nasty things, you do not get to walk out and just crawl yourself out of a hole without paying really dearly. And that's where the romance with the young people come in. Alright, I'm going to go into spoilers. If you haven't seen Godfather 3, Michael Corleone tries to buy the church. And he thinks if he can buy the church and make his enterprise a legitimate enterprise and leave crime behind, that will absolve him. But of course, man killed a lot of people. You don't get to walk away from that easily. And there's actually an archbishop who tells him, it's like, no, that's not how redemption works. It's like, you don't just get to clean up the mess and go like, da-da! You made the mess, you're going to lie in it, and you need to pay, you need to make penance. And it's like, okay. And then the thing is, a lot of people complain that at the end, Michael Corleone should have died.
Why?
Because then that would have been his ultimate payment for his crimes. He gets shot. But instead what happens in the movie is that his daughter gets killed. His daughter that he absolutely loves. His daughter that is starting a big romance in his life that people go, I got usurped by it. It's like, no, it's important that you show what she's dealing with and how much full of joy she is and how much Michael wants to keep her away from crime and all of that and wants a beautiful future. Because when she dies, that's his penance.
Yeah.
That's his ultimate suffering.
I can see that.
The priest sort of points out to him is like, look, man, if you don't suffer in this life, you're going to suffer in the next one. Because what you've done in your life, you can't just walk away. Don't fool yourself because you're giving us money that you're going to be able to walk away. And that's the whole idea of the movie. The movie ends with her getting killed, and then it cuts to him as an old man, dying alone in the middle of Italy, with absolutely no one around him, and dying kind of like his father of a heart attack. Everybody goes like, oh, he just dies the same way, but it's so artificial. It's like, no, he dies the opposite way, because his father in the first movie dies of a heart attack the same way he does, but he dies surrounded by his family. He dies all alone. Nobody wants to talk to him anymore, and he lost his child. And he's spent 30 to 40 years living as a miserable old man with his guilt to carry for 30 or 40 years. That's penance. It's a really powerful symbolic ending, and just in terms of logic in the movie. And it's just everybody was going like, but I want more of Godfather 2, and it's like, but it's the next chapter in his life. It's a different movie.
If you want more Godfather 2, watch Godfather 2 again.
I know.
Second time.
Your next pick for overrated movie then.
We're underrated, my friend.
Underrated movie.
Underrated. Airplane 2, the sequel. Airplane was a really funny comedy. Groundbreaking in many ways, and people didn't like Airplane 2 first. And I thought, okay, the jokes, it's really hard to go back to the level of Airplane, but it was still a very funny movie, and I don't see why people think it's not funny. It's very funny. The jokes in there are still great. It's just, I guess people have such a high expectation watching Airplane. They go see Airplane 2 and it's like, well, it's not as great. It's still a very, very good movie. It's in no way a bad movie that, people don't like. I don't understand why.
I'm just going to make fun of you now, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Your entire spiel about why you feel that Airplane 2, the sequel, is underrated is because people don't like it, and then you like it, and you don't understand why people don't like it because you like it, and it's good because people don't like it. You've just defined underrated 16 times in the same sentence, but you don't actually discuss why it's underrated.
I don't know why. It's a funny movie. What do you feel about the movie?
I think it has some of the most memorable jokes that I've seen in comedies. I think the Zucker brothers just are genius about. I still remember from my childhood, the first time I saw Airplane 2, the sequel, the scene where they communicate on the screen to William Shatner, and they talk to William Shatner, and then William Shatner opens the door because it turns out they were just talking to him across a door with a window. I still remember that as one of those funny jokes from my childhood.
I guess, but, Airplane 1 had so many more quotable jokes that people keep repeating over and over again that I guess they don't like the second one as much. I don't know why people think it's a bad movie, is my thing. As what I was trying to convey. But it's a very funny movie. I can't go any more details of why it's really funny movie. It just is. Something's funny or it isn't.
All right. Yeah, awesomest podcast ever. I like this because it's good.
Oh, you did the same thing for Godfather 3, seriously.
It's hard with comedies because it's either it makes you laugh or it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know? And I agree with you. Airplane 2, the sequel, makes me laugh every time.
But it's the same kind of humor too, so as well.
And it's not the same jokes, and that's really important. That's
yes.
one of the things. It is not the same jokes.
Yeah, you don't have the same guy, saying "Don't call me Shirley," in the second one. That would have been just no, seriously.
Don't call me Shirley again, but Shirley again is my name.
Oh, that would have been bad.
Yeah.
Okay, they didn't have the captain, which was awesome in the first movie, but that's can't have the same actors all the time.
Yeah, you gotta move on.
Yeah,
they had William Shatner instead, and that was pretty awesome.
That is the definition of awesome.
Straight up.
All right, so where's your second movie?
Oh, fine. My second movie. Longtime listeners know I am a big horror fan, and longtime cinephiles know that nobody makes as many sequels as horror film producers. I mean, we're talking about like 12 Friday the 13th movies, 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and 8 Hellraiser movies. And I'm gonna go with one of those 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I'm gonna go with Nightmare on Elm Street 5, which keeps getting the flack for killing the franchise, and box office wise, yeah, pretty much did. But it's actually a really lovely movie.
Lovely for a horror movie.
Thank you for calling me on that. When it came out of my mouth, I was going like, wrong choice of words. The thing with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is that this is one of the those horror franchises that essentially repeat the same movie with different types of kids. Well, different kids every time, essentially. Well, I mean, the second movie is very different. And then, in fact, I could have named the second movie as one of my underrated picks as well. If only because everybody hates it so much. But I actually like it less than the fifth one. So, 3 and 4 and 5 are essentially the same story. And it got campier and campier because, like, by that time, we were reaching the 90s. And it's like, it just started getting really campy in horror film.
I mean, it's hard to make him scary continuously. I mean, you have to go, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's it. The more you know him, the less scary he is, essentially. Yeah. But the fifth movie actually tried. Like, it actually gave it an honest try of going, like, let's try to make Freddy scary again, And what's really interesting about that movie is that they went an approach that I did not think... Like, it's actually an ingenious approach. Because usually, if you want to make a creepy monster scary, what do? You
have to make him disgusting. More menacing, he has to be able to do scary shit to you.
Yeah. They went the opposite route. They went, like, let's make him weak.
Really?
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing where they went like, okay, at the end of the fourth movie, Freddy pretty much lost all of his powers, so now in the fifth movie he needs to be reborn, but like logically speaking, he should be less powerful because he lost a lot of the souls that power him. Yeah, at that point, it's a comic book, I realize, but what are you gonna do? And so what they did is, they made him weaker, and they made him afraid of another presence that is not revealed until the end of the movie. So throughout the entire movie, you have these really creepy images going on with this guy just running around being, a murderer and all of that. But he's really pissing his pants over something else that's after him that you as your viewer don't even know what it is. And you're going like, okay, what in God's name could possibly scare Freddy, and how much scarier is that? And I thought that was such an interesting and cool concept,
Okay.
And this is one of the rare movies that actually play with the dream narrative as not as just this funky thing where you could do crazy stuff. Because the sixth movie at that point actually had Freddy killing people by Nintendo.
Awesome.
The fifth movie actually uses dream narrative not just to do crazy stuff, but actually uses dream narrative where you actually get to see the origin of Freddy from different people's point of view, because it keeps cutting, and the dreamer sees it, and the dreamer keeps switching characters, which is so true of dreams. I don't know about your dreams, but I do that in dreams all the time, where I actually switch characters in a dream.
Okay.
And it just like it really studied how the dream narrative works and actually implemented that. Where the movie falters, and where I understand that people don't like it as much, is that the producers felt that his kills should be extended. So all of the kills in Freddy, the Dream Child, which is the fifth Freddy movie, you have the victim dying, and then they come back alive again to get killed all over again, because they added those scenes to extend the death sequences.
Oh, that's silly.
Yeah, it gets distracting. We're like, that's just dumb. And the secondary kill is always over the top and crazy. You're like, that's just really dumb. Because the first thing was really dramatic, and then you added some goofiness right next to it. They should do a phantom edit with that, where you just cut out. Well, actually, I did it on the VHS, but now I would have to redo it again on computer. But where you just cut out that crap, and then you have a really perfectly good horror movie.
Okay. Spoiler alert: what was he so afraid of?
The spirit of his mother.
Oh, that's lame. My number one pick is Scary Movie 3. Scary Movie 1 and 2 are not that good. 1 is mediocre. Scary Movie 2 is horrible. Scary Movie 3, it's funny again. They changed the director. David Zucker took over from the Wayne brothers, and is very, very funny. And Scary Movie 4 is very funny as well. So I recommend those. If you got discouraged from watching Scary Movie 1 and 2, just pop in Scary Movie 3. It is very funny. You can even start at Scary Movie 3. You won't be lost in the story. It's perfectly fine. It's a very good movie.
Yeah, no, the Scary Movie franchise is one of those rare franchises where watching the sequels, you do need to watch the previous movies. But previous movies means the movies they're making fun of, not the Scary Movie franchise movies. I agree with you. The Zucker brother ones are way funnier. And that's more largely because I think they removed the vulgarity. I mean, there's still a little bit of vulgarity in it, but it's no longer the main focus of the jokes the way it was with the first two Scary movies.
Yeah, that's true.
David Zucker, he's the one who did Airplane and Naked Gun and all of that. Like, this is a guy who knows slapstick comedy and became an expert at it back in the 70s and 80s. So him coming back to the franchise was actually really cool.
I love when he has Leslie Nielsen quote one of the lines from Airplanes in the middle of Scary Movie 3. That was just hilarious. It's worth seeing just for that.
Oh, yeah. And the fourth one I also like a lot, because most of the movie makes fun of War of the Worlds. Which, admittedly, is not a scary movie, so I don't know why they decided to spoof that specifically. But that guy nails Tom Cruise so well, especially since War of the Worlds is possibly Tom Cruise's worst performance in his career. Except maybe Legend, but that doesn't count.
He didn't have much material to work with, though, to be honest.
That's true. But it's because he's supposed to play an everyman, and the way he plays it goes like, oh my god, Tom Cruise, that's what you think an everyman is? Because he's so twitchy in that movie. Yeah. It's really weird. But anyway, but back to Scary Movie. Yeah, no, I agree. It's just leaps and bounds better.
Yeah.
Kind of in the same spirit, actually, I'm actually going to recommend the movie that started the Scary Movie franchise, and I mean Scream.
All right.
The sequel to Scream, Scream 2, 1997. Again, Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, writer-director, respectively. I'm recommending it mostly in the context of this episode because this is a movie that just spoofs sequels so well. Because the whole point of Scream 2 was, these are the 3 rules of a horror sequel. And this is what happens when you do a sequel, and they nailed it. Like, Wes Craven used a different camera that captures light a little bit more brightly, and that does happen with sequels a lot when they start using more commercial equipment, and it gives the film this really weird grainy style. But that's actually happens in sequels really commonly that they do that. And then there's the 3 rules of the sequel that they come up with, like higher body count, more elaborate deaths, never expect the killer to be dead, which it's specific to horror films, but it applies to all sequels as well, in the sense of like, yeah, it's true, sequels are all about escalation. It's the same bad guy, except he's harder to kill, you know?
Yeah.
And it's the same set pieces, except there's more explosions and more stunts. You know, it's like he totally nailed what a sequel is like, Kevin Williamson did. And then, as a sequel in itself as well, it works, because it's all about, enhancing the theme of the first movie, and the first movie was all about kids being desensitized to the media, by the media, so that, when they live a horror film, they go like, yeah, I've seen this before, and they can't even connect that they're gonna die. And in this one, it's actually about the same kids entering the media. They're in film school, and the killers come back. There's a movie being made of the events of the first movie. And even when you reveal what the killer is, it's all about this, without going to spoiler, but the killer is all about embracing the media and taking his, his sociopathic lack of sensibility towards death and mayhem to the next level in the media. It's actually really funny.
I don't remember the movie that well. I remember it being enjoyable, and that's about it. I just remember having fun watching it, but it's been a while since I've seen it. But yeah, I think it was a good movie, so recommend it too.
Yeah. So that's it, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let us know, please, your underrated sequel picks. Now, come on. There's bound to be a lot of them. Yeah?
Some of them we didn't even think of.
For sure. No, for sure. I mean, there are so many sequels out there. There's got to be a lot that people like that no one else likes. So let us know. You can write us at mail@idiomanic.com, or post a comment right below the episode at idiomanic.com.
Yep. See you next week.
And so there are new ideas being produced, but a lot of times you're just recycling the same archetypes. Like, you can't tell me there's that much of a difference between John McClane and, Riggs from Lethal Weapon. They have different backgrounds, but are they really that different, Bad example. They actually are different. Because one's not a crazy racist.
Exactly. But, yeah, right. They're not that different, They're just the archetypal, action star tough guy that,
So if you're going to have a tough guy, and you already have created a tough guy that people like, why not just reuse the same characters so that we don't have to go through the same cliches like, he's a tough guy, but he has a heart of gold. Yes, we know.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through that again. It's a shortcut. Why create a guy that's like James Bond if you can have James Bond,
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's fun to, you see how will the director establish, or the writer establish that he's a bad guy with a heart of gold. You need different scenes to establish, that, and you want to see how the guy does it.
Yeah. Well, it's true that even in the sequel, you sort of have to
age. So he knew this is over. I'm passing the torch, and yeah, but his character is completely different from what has been established in the first 3 movies. Even in the horror fest that is Highlander 2, he keeps the same character that he has in the first movie. He was an
alien in the first movie, and then the second movie.
Besides the alien, he's kind of he's a little on time, so he's amused at everything that's happened to him, but he still enjoys living, and he, so that's what he was. And in the fourth, it's completely different. So if you're going to reuse characters, that's the point, that they're already established, and the audience likes them. You want to keep them the same way, and that's why I think sequels are fun, because you don't have to recreate the characters all over again.
It allows you to take some shortcuts, because the thing is, there are only so many times you can reinvent the wheel,
Yeah.
Until we get, because every once in a while somebody comes up with a new way of doing things. In cinema, as in everything else, it evolves.
One thing. So you don't have to take all the time to reestablish them again and again. Okay, this is this character, this is what he likes, this is what he hates. Again, that's only useful when you actually respect what the character is in the sequel following. Okay, a certain example where the character changes completely, I don't like that for no reason whatsoever as well.
You're referring to April O'Neil in Ninja Turtles 2, aren't you?
For example, one sequel that, people like, it wasn't the worst of the series, but Highlander Endgames.
Mm-hmm.
In the previous movies, Connor McLeod is like, he loves life, and he wants to live, he has fun. And in the fourth one, he's all brooding for no reason whatsoever, and he hates everything, and he wants to die. And that's not Connor McLeod. I mean, and that, I kind of hated about the movie. It's not the same character.
Are you sure that it wasn't Christophe Lambert just being really depressed that the other guy's getting more attention than him at this point?
No, Christophe Lambert wanted to end it. He wanted to be, it over because he knew he was getting too old to play some in the world that didn't age.
2, 3.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Idiomatic Top 3.
With Nicholas, I am the gaming correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic and movie critic. In the last episode, we did overrated picks for sequels, and we promised a part 2, where we would discuss the mechanics of the sequel, and here it is, right now. With a question that we absolutely need to ask when we talk about sequels is, well, what's the point of a sequel? Like, do you prefer a sequel than a new franchise being created? Like, because there are a lot of sequels in Hollywood. I mean, I think this summer, half the movies coming out as blockbusters are sequels in some shape or form, or reboots or remakes or whatever.
Yeah.
Why are there so many sequels? Is a sequel really better than a new franchise?
I don't know. I like a sequel because you already have established characters. That's when
Remind people of who he is.
Yeah, but not as much, I guess. So, yeah. But yeah, I think you're right that, if you have the guy already, just use the guy.
Yeah. The flip side of that, however, is that you do run the risk of being redundant at some point. Like, when you reach, again, because I'm a horror fan, the first example that comes to mind is something like Halloween with Michael Myers there.
Yeah.
After the 7th or 8th movie, which is actually where they're at this point, I know who Michael is. I know what he does to kill people. I've seen it 6 times at this point. I'm bored.
Yeah.
Because, that's an example of where, at this point, I would rather see a different monster. I know that the different monster is still going to kill, teenagers and babysitters or people in the woods in the case of Jason. But if it's a different killer, you can bring something new to it, you know what I mean? And,
yeah.
and that, of course, applies to other genres as well. Certainly in action movies, if you actually have a different character in mind with a different background,